This is David Diaz, former WBC lightweight champion of the world, and you're listening to The Grueling Truth.
Welcome, everybody, to the Grueling Truth Inside Boxing Weekly Show. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now I want to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser.
Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here. Excited for a new episode of The Grueling Truth.
Well, and I think that's like 6 to 7 weeks in a row I've gotten your last name correct.
That is right. Hey, it doesn't even cross my mind anymore. You got it, man.
It still does mine because I don't know. I screwed it up a lot early on. And if people don't know, it's not spelled Pricer either. So
that's right.
Actually, he spelled it wrong, which is what confused me.
Yeah.
But, hey, we'll start. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, I can always tell when people don't know my last name because they call me and they think it's French. They're like, is Jeremiah Preisser there? I'm like, sorry, click.
Well, all right, we'll start off. We'll review. We actually had some pretty good fights this last weekend. We'll start off with Felix Verdejo against Juan Jose Martinez. What was your take there?
I thought Verdejo looked good. I mean, there's a lot of hype surrounding him. It seems like the HBO, they want him to be the new Miguel Cotto. He's had a couple flat performances, in the two fights before this. But he looked pretty good here. Looked well-rounded. Finished the fight. I didn't really see him land a whole lot in the finishing combo, but, he had that fire. He had that drive to go out and get it. And I thought he looked good, and I'm excited for him to move up and see what he can do at 135.
Yeah, I think it's hard to really gauge how good he was against Juan Jose Martinez. I mean, I don't think that was the best of competition for him. I know they're trying to look at him, moving around, make him look good. That will bring us to Demetrius Andrade versus Willie Nelson.
Yeah, I thought the fight would be a little more competitive. Willie Nelson is a really tall, wiry guy. He can hit a little bit, but I don't know. His strategy seemed to be get close. He had a high guard going, but he didn't really let his hands go. I mean, he kept trying to get close, but Andrade was working him, so he just put the guard up and didn't end up doing much effectively. Andrade just, he maintained the pace, kept up the aggression, landed a lot of really nice uppercuts and right hooks on the inside. And what I was happy about is that when Andrade knocked Willie Nelson down in the 11th, he showed a killer instinct, which isn't something you see a lot from boxers. And he went out and finished in the 12th, and I was happy. I think he's one of the best 154-pounders in the world now. I'd like to see him get a title shot, and honestly, there aren't very many people I would favor over him.
Okay, and then we had what we knew would be a slugfest, which actually John Molina, I think, looked better than he's ever looked. He actually used his jab in a unanimous decision win over Ruslan Provodnikov. What was your take on that one? Yeah,
I think a lot of us were expecting a good fight. I think we were expecting more of a slugfest. But it looks like John Molina went back and watched the tape, ripped the page right out of Lucas Matisse's book, and just stuck with his straight punches. He jabbed a ton, landed a bunch of right hands. I mean, Provodnikov, the guy needs to learn to move his head a little bit more. But I mean, it's not good for his health. But I'll get to that a little bit later. Molina he outboxed him. I mean, he did a really good job. A lot of us didn't expect that. I mean, because Molina, sort of like Verdejo recently, he's had a couple flat performances, against Broner, for instance. I mean, he didn't even let his hands go. Provodnikov kept running in his shots and got outboxed. But apparently from the post-fight interview, Provodnikov may not have his heart in the game anymore, and that may be a reason why he just didn't fight to the best of his ability.
Well, I mean, I think it had a lot to do. I mean, really, Provodnikov looked the same the last couple fights to me.
Yeah, he's much too reliant on his left hook. I mean, when I was watching him coming up, I thought he would be a little bit better, but he just needs to learn to avoid punches, needs to learn how to get past the jab, which having a long amateur background, I figured that would be one of the fundamental things you got to learn to do. But he's just too left hook heavy, and he's got to. At this point, I'm not sure he can learn any new tricks, but if he gets, I mean, he can still be an exciting fight. If they put him against a guy like Brandon Rios, I'm sure they could make decent money doing that, entertain some people.
Yeah, and where do you think John Molina goes from now on? Do you give him more of a chance after the exhibition he just put on?
Molina looked good, but he fights another top-notch guy at 140 pounds, like Rances Bartholomew, who's moving up, Victor Postal or Terrence Crawford, even Edward Troyanovsky. I don't see him beating any of those guys. I mean, he may be able to work himself into title contention with this win. I mean, I personally wouldn't want to see it, but maybe they throw him in with a brawler who's a bit more skilled, and they get a little more out of him. I don't see him winning a title, and I don't really see him winning any fights against the best. But he's got new life to his career.
Yeah, and I mean, he is a guy that always comes to fight. I mean, he usually puts on a good show. So does Provodnikov. And I think in the end, it's just Provodnikov, like you said, is either uninterested or from all the brawls he's had, maybe just not quite as quick as he used to be. And it was a lot easier for Molina to land a jab also.
Yeah, very well. I guess we'll see, which way both of their careers head from here on out. I mean, I wish Provodnikov the best, but, if you don't want to take that many punches in the face anymore, I understand.
All righty. Then we will go to Vasily Lomachenko with a devastating knockout. It has to be up for knockout of the year over Roman Martinez.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Lomachenko for years. I had the pleasure of watching his pro debut against Ramirez. Guy Mares had a little trouble with, but, back then I had doubts. I watched Lomachenko in the amateurs. I watched him in the WSB, and I expected big things out of him. And I saw his debut, and I was like, he's having a little issue letting his hands go. And then he loses to Salido, gets a little lesson in professional boxing. But in every fight since, he's improved dramatically. I mean, the kid looks like an all-time great in the making, in my opinion. I mean, there's not much that he can't do. I mean, a lot of us thought that I still wouldn't say he's a big puncher, but he proves that he's a bit more of a puncher than we would like to admit. I mean, he has hurt every single opponent that he's been in with, and I think he probably has an extra knockout on his resume. Granted, he doesn't hurt his hand against the Thai guy that he fought. But Lomachenko went in there, and he just ate Martinez up. I mean, Martinez, he was biting at all of the feints. He couldn't defend against any of the body shots, and when Lomachenko feints low, he hits him upstairs. When he feints high, he hits him downstairs. He just had Martinez baffled. Martinez barely could land the punch. Lomachenko just did as he pleases, and the knockout was beautiful. I don't think it wins knockout of the year, but it's certainly a contender. The way he landed the left uppercut and then followed it up with a right hook to the head, just putting him out. A tough guy, by the way. I mean, this is a guy, Ricky Burns has fought. This is a guy Salido fought twice, and I don't think Salido knocked him down once. And Salido's a pretty good puncher. So good win for Lomachenko. I'm excited to see where he goes from here. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a Salido rematch.
Now, do you believe that Bob Arum is on the right track when he compares him to Manny Pacquiao? Said he was as good as Pacquiao.
Well, I certainly think Lomachenko is as good as at their relative points in their career. I would say that Lomachenko is better. I mean, Lomachenko, he's won two, trinkets in two divisions in 7 fights. I mean, that's not, and their career paths are a little bit different. Manny Pacquiao, like a lot of Asian fighters, he had to get a lot of experience under his belt before he started moving up. Lomachenko's amateur experience is huge. I think Lomachenko can be every bit as good as Manny Pacquiao, but I think their career projections will continue to differ because Pacquiao was able to move up through the weights. I mean, he started at 106, ended up at, he went as high as 152 against Margarito. Lomachenko just isn't, I don't see him having that impact in as many classes. He seems like a small guy. I think he only put on 7 pounds or something after the weigh-in, and that's not very much at all, especially with a lot of these guys. Guys like Nicholas Walter who are putting on 15-plus pounds. Salido, who's putting on about 20 when he fought Lomachenko. So I think Lomachenko is virtually unbeatable from 126 to 135, and if he wants, he can make his way in and out of those classes as he pleases. But I prefer him at 126. I think he has unfinished business there, and I like it because it's a more traditional class, and it's also talent-laden.
Yeah. So do you think his next fight's against Orlando Salido? It seems like he wants it to be.
Yeah, so Salido has always been willing, and you know, you got to appreciate that. I do think they'd go with a rematch. I mean, I think it makes sense personally because Salido's coming off 2 damn good victories in which he very well could have gotten the win. You know, I had him winning slightly against Vargas. I had him winning slightly against Roman Martinez in the rematch. I think get him while he's still hot. He redeems himself, you know, because that's the only criticism that people have against Lomachenko. They're like, oh, well, he got beat by Salido. You know, granted, it was his second professional bout, and not many guys are taking that sort of opposition in their second professional fight. But, yeah, I think he beats Salido up and gets a stoppage, redeems himself.
Yeah, but, I mean, he definitely needs to unify that division.
Yeah, I agree, and unfortunately it's fractured right now. But I think he beats Salido in a rematch. I see Walters probably down the road because they're both top-ranked guys. But I would love to see him fight against Jose Pedraza, who said he wants to fight. I like Pedraza a lot, too. Pedraza holds a little title. You know, Terry Flanagan and hopefully, I forget the guy who beat Uchiyama, Jazeel, I believe his name is. But, yeah, I'd love to see him unified. But I also want him down at 126. And I know it seems like it's easier negotiating at 130 because a lot of Heyman guys are at 126. But personally, I'd like to see Rigondeaux versus Lomachenko, and I think that could happen, but I'm not sure it will.
Man, I would favor Lomachenko in that.
I would too. I mean, a lot of Rigondeaux is an excellent fighter. He certainly, you know, has good potential, but he's a little bit older. My thing is, I think Lomachenko is just as skilled as Rigondeaux, but I think he's more versatile. Lomachenko can box and brawl. His work rate is also very high, whereas Rigondeaux' is not. Also, from what I'm aware of, Lomachenko has only hit the canvas once in his entire amateur career. I mean, you know, we're talking about 400 fights. He wasn't stopped, and he certainly hasn't looked chinny in the pro game. I mean, he hasn't taken a lot of shots. But that's one thing Rigondeaux has shown. He has shown that he can't take a good, clean shot. I mean, he was dropped by a jab against Cordoba. He was dropped. I mean, he was hurt twice against Moroccan. He was dropped twice against the Japanese fighter. He also hit the deck against Donaire. I'd favor Lomachenko as well.
All right, so that brings us to the fights coming up this week. Kind of a short list of fights this week. But we got Juan Carlos Poyano in a rematch with Cincinnati's Rashid Warren. Great fight the first time they fought. Poyano won a split decision. What's your take on this one? You think there's going to be any difference or any change in the outcome?
I do. I actually favor Warren here. He's fairly inexperienced as a pro, and I really like Poyano. I saw him against Anselmo Moreno, who I think is one of the slickest fighters out there, and a guy who I think got jobbed against Yamanaka, who's a pound-for-pound guy according to the ring. But Poyano, he's a real high work rate kind of guy, quick hands. He also had a big amateur career. I think he's a really good fighter. But Warren seemed to kind of turn the tide later on in the fight against Poyano. Poyano was pretty rough, getting in there, you know, working the inside. But I think Warren, you know, seeing as he had a long amateur background, he seems like a crafty guy, cerebral. I think he adapts this time and does more of what he did late in the first fight, and he outboxes him to a close decision.
Okay, I agree with you. I think Warren, he only had 12 or 13 fights when he fought Poyano, which was a huge step up from anybody he fought. Like you said, great amateur. So I think that the experience he gained the last fight will be the difference in him being able to overcome and get the decision in this fight. Yeah,
and I think Warren may. I mean, he went to three Olympics, which is outstanding. And he's not. I think he's 29. He might be 30, so he has a few years left. But he may be the best fighter the best American to come off that team. I know a lot of people would agree with me and say it was Spence, but Warren he's lightning quick. He doesn't hit very hard, but he's just a guy I see doing good things down there.
All right, and then we've got probably the main event of the week. We've got Fonfara against Joe Smith. Fonfara, probably the third best light heavyweight in the world. Don't know if you agree with that or not, but that's my statement. He's had a couple really nice wins. He beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., won a unanimous decision over Nathan Cleverly in his most recent outing. I think the Cleverly fight was like the two men combined to throw 2,500 punches, and he connected on over 900 of them. I know Joe Smith, from the research I've done, tough kid, Long Island, punches really hard, but he's never really faced anything close to the caliber of fighter that will oppose him in Chicago later this week.
Yeah, I agree. Fonfara just seems a step too high, and Fonfara's a guy I really like. I'm not quite sure. He may be the third best light heavyweight in the world right now, though I think his ranking is soon to drop, not because I think Joe Smith beats him, but because the class is really getting loaded. But yeah, I see Fonfara as a step too high. He's got a lot of experience. He seemed to gotten better since the Stevenson fight. I just think he breaks him down. Like you said, against Cleverly, has a high work rate. He's got good pop. Was able to stop Chavez Jr., who a lot of people thought was iron chinned. But yeah, I just see Fonfara outworking him, breaking him down, stopping him in the middle late rounds.
All right, and that pretty much wraps up for the week there. There's a few things we'll talk about. I know there's one fight I know you're excited about, so am I. That's Glowacki versus Usyk for the cruiserweight title.
Yeah, I'm personally very excited about that. As an American, I follow the cruiserweight division. It's been dominated by the Europeans for so long, and I suspect it will continue to do so for years to come because of the influx of more Eastern Europeans. But with Glowacki, he beat who I thought was the man in the division. So this won't be a lineal championship, but whoever wins, in my opinion, is the man, because Huck was the man until Glowacki beat him.
And plus he beat Steve Cunningham. Exactly.
He had a nice defense against Cunningham. Cunningham tried his best, was competitive certainly, but Glowacki put him down, 4 times?
Yeah.
Something like that, but as good as Glowacki has looked, and he certainly does look good, I think Usyk is something special. I kind of see him as the Lomachenko of the cruiserweight division. He beat all sorts of good people in the amateurs. He beat Artur Beterbiev. He's very stylistically similar to Lomachenko, except that I don't think he's quite as slick, though he is very slick. But he has something that Lomachenko doesn't, and I think Usyk is more of a puncher than Lomachenko is. I think only one of Usyk's fights has gone the distance. I see the kid as the best prospect coming out of cruiserweight since Evander Holyfield, honestly. And I see Usyk outboxing him, and this kid looks really good. I'm hoping Anthony Joshua keeps progressing, and then Usyk will eventually move up to heavyweight. And I'm hoping for a future showdown, but, that's being
idealistic. So my question right here is this, though. Usyk's only had 9 professional fights. Do you think maybe this could be a little bit too soon?
Yeah, it could. It could. There's always that to kind of add into the mix.
Kind of like Carl Thompson and David Hay?
Yeah.
Hay came up and tried to fight for the cruiserweight title after 10 or 12 fights.
Yeah, that very well could be the case. And I see Glowacki as a little... Thompson I was never highly impressed with. He got it done for his skill set, but I'm personally, of course, again, you can always add that into the mix, and there's always that factor there. But I see Usyk as the heir apparent. He is the guy to run the division, in my opinion, and I think he overcomes his experience deficit and outboxes him.
And see, he's a young fighter. He's going to have to fight in Poland also.
Yeah, he is. And one thing I've noticed about the Eastern European crowds as of late, they've become more like the English soccer crowds, where they're loud. They've got bands. They're praising and cheering and singing songs, and that could play on Usyk. But he's fought in a couple of those crowds. He's actually pretty popular in Ukraine, and I think he does okay. I think he'll handle it.
All right, then we got Bob Arum and Al Heyman settled their lawsuit. What do you think are the chances those two will work together?
Well, for the sake of boxing, I'm hoping that they can somehow settle their dispute and make the fights people want to see. I mean, this is actually part of the reason why Vasil Lomachenko moved up to 130, because at 126 you have Abner Mares, you've got Cruz, you have Gary Russell Jr., you have who's the Argentine banger? Can't think of his name right now, but you've got a bunch of guys who are controlled by Heyman, and Arum couldn't get Lomachenko fights with him, so there was nobody to negotiate with. So Lomachenko moved up. I mean, and you see stuff like a lot of these guys have been keeping the money in house because of this. But I'm hoping, I mean, for the sake of boxing, I just wish it wasn't so fragmented. I hope they do work together. I hope they do make the fights that people need and want. I mean, middleweight is another example. You got Danny Jacobs up there, and he's an Al Heyman guy. You got Peter Quillen up there. He's an Al Heyman guy. We all just want to see the best fight the best, and we all want to see the promoters lay down, the bickering and get it done for us and for the sport.
All right, now we'll go to the heavyweight division. You had a couple things there. What's your take on Deontay Wilder fighting Chris Arreola? Oh,
it's a fantastic fight. I mean, Arreola is a huge puncher, always in wonderful shape.
Yeah.
No, it's a stay busy fight until the Wilder Povetkin thing gets sorted out. The WBC allowed him to have a voluntary, and that's fine. I mean, honestly, I didn't want it to be Arreola. Areola's had too many chances. This is just, I don't see Arreola doing anything. Of course, with the heavyweight division, you always have a puncher's chance. And Arreola can pop a little bit.
Yeah, we don't know how well Wilder takes a punch.
I don't think Wilder takes a good punch. I mean, he was stopped.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I just think Wilder is going to be too smart. I mean, Wilder hasn't shown that he's this cerebral guy, and he does give up his length many times. But I just see him coming out, popping the jab, throwing straight right hands, and getting Arreola out of there.
Wear him out, knock him out in 2 or 3 rounds, maybe 4 if Arreola's in close to shape, which he never has been.
Yeah, he's looked like crap lately. I mean, I thought he lost to Classy. Thought he lost to Sveko, I think is his name. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but yeah, Arreola.
Stilzik or something, like SPZIL or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
he has a hard time with everybody anymore.
Yeah, and so it's easy fight.
Hell, I'd rather see Mike Mollo or Jason Gavern get a title shot.
Yeah.
Seriously, I mean, Arreola's had every opportunity to straighten himself out, and he never has done it.
Yeah, well, and they couldn't find somebody else to fill in. I don't know, maybe like Fedosov, the Russian heavyweight who won that Boxino heavyweight tournament for ESPN, or somebody. I mean, get somebody else.
Yeah, somebody that's hungry mentally instead of hungry physically.
Right. Yeah, Arreola is clearly hungry often.
Yeah, that's a pretty good line. It just came off the top of my head, don't you think?
Yeah, it was good.
Let's see. All right, then our last topic of the night, Tommy Zbikowski. People don't remember, football player at the University of Notre Dame. I think he's had 1 or 2 professional fights. What's your take on Zbikowski and his future in the heavyweight division?
Well, it doesn't seem like he's been active enough. It seems like he's been fence-sitting a little bit where, he's only been sort of active. But, he showed some upside, in the fights that I've seen. But he's also a little bit older now, after after the NFL career fell through. I mean, he looks good. Do I see him as a heavyweight contender? Probably not at this point. But if they move him carefully, like they have guys like Mike Lee, he may get some good wins under his belt. He may get a significant fight, may be able to cash out. He's got, like you said earlier, he's got the complexion.
To get the connections.
Right. That's right.
But and the other thing is he's 31 years old. So
yeah.
I know a lot of heavyweights, Ortiz the Cuban, but he was boxing the whole time. He wasn't playing football.
Right.
I know Zubikowski retired, I think, in 2013. He's a firefighter in the Chicago Fire Department right now. He's had 5 fights. His last fight, he won a unanimous decision against Keith Jackson. I do not believe that is the old ABC college football announcer, but hell, you never know. Not with boxing. But, I mean, if you look at him, a unanimous decision against Caleb Grummett. So, yeah, I don't think there's any huge... Didn't he fight on the undercard of maybe Koto Malinaji?
I couldn't even tell you at this point. I mean, he's fought I couldn't even tell you.
But, and I know at one point he was under the instruction of Emmanuel Stewart.
Yeah.
So he did have people that knew what they were doing with him at some time. But at 31 years of age, like I said, unless they're just going to put him up against a bunch of tomato cans and let him run up 12 to 15 wins and then feed him to Deontay Wilder or something, I don't see much coming of it.
No, nor do I.
But any final words, Jeremiah?
No final words. Not a whole lot has been announced that's really tickled my fancy lately.
Yeah, we do have some good fights to talk about next week. We got Porter Thurman, I believe, don't we?
Yeah, that's a fight a lot of us are looking forward to. Can't wait to talk about it. It's going to be a great fight.
Yep, so you guys can catch us next week, same time. We will be on again with that. Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, actually 2 of my favorite fighters to watch, too, which makes it even better. And I think it'll be a hell of a fight.
Oh, me too. I mean, it's always a pleasure just to have 2 top guys get in the ring and go at it, but it's also another thing to have 2 likable and exciting guys who are also top guys go at it.
Well, couldn't say it any better than that. Make sure you check us out on thegruelingtruth.net. Check out our new show this week, the CFL Weekly Show. We're going to have former CFL All-Star Robert Drummond was running back, won multiple Grey Cups. Also, check out the Gridiron Super Bowl show. That'll be late Wednesday night. Basically, check out all the shows. Like I said, growingtruth.net. You can catch us on iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, just about everywhere you find podcasts, you'll find us. Also, Google Music. So for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.